Chapter 1091, Bait and Fish. The case of the Kuan City slave owner, that had caused a lot of worry, was finally solved. It was as if the enemy was afraid of the existence of the heavenly network. Thus, there were more cases of slave owners overseas, and fewer in China. This made sense. If they had taken the opportunity to make a move while Duanmu Huangqi was attacking the Longmen fortress, they should have known how strong the heavenly network was. Alternatively, they were developing regions outside the heavenly network's territory in order to attack the heavenly network in the future. The speed at which the issue of the slave owner in Kuan City had been resolved caused everyone to be very happy. The heavenly network had the responsibility of protecting the people. They could not endure any mischief on their territory. But when the news was transmitted, everyone was very puzzled. How did they find the slave owner in a bathhouse? Who discovered them? Did they discover the slave owner when they were taking a bath? This was just a coincidence. After the slave owner came to Earth, he realized that the bathhouse was crowded and suitable for him to conceal himself. Furthermore, it was much more convenient to bathe on Earth than in the Luniverse. Lu Shu had used the same logic while selling soap in the Luniverse. If you were used to being dirty, you would not feel anything. However, once you were clean for a period of time, you would no longer be able to stand being dirty. Then, the mice that Little Fury had deployed there had discovered a slave, who informed him about what had happened recently. Although the slave owner had no mark, it was problematic for a slave to whisper to someone else. However, everyone was surprised when the heavenly network surrounded the bathhouse. The slave owner instantly chose to kill himself by swallowing poison. He did not put up any resistance. They did not even know how strong the slave owner was. He was probably not a Class A. If he was a Class A, it would have been easy for him to escape with his ability to fly. Of course, this was a simple conclusion based on reason. In reality, Nie Ting had been in Kuan City all along, but no one expected the slave owner to be so decisive and hide poison in his mouth. Earlier, everyone had considered the possibility that the people from the Luniverse were not organized in any way. They had just wanted to spontaneously accept a few slaves. But now, it was clear that these people were underlings. Once they were exposed, they would commit suicide. There was definitely someone frightening controlling them from behind the scenes. No matter what, at least the heavenly network had found a way to target them. Little Fury, Lu Shu and the rest had received a new piece of information. Someone had tried to force Sakurai Yeko to be their slave and control the collection of gods, but they had failed. This could either be a major or minor issue. It was a minor issue because on the surface, this had nothing to do with the heavenly network. Thus, it was not high on their priority list. The collection of gods was at odds with the heavenly network. Furthermore, the heavenly network disliked the practitioners in Japan. But it was a major issue as till now, the heavenly network had not received any news that the slave owners had attacked the leaders of any organizations. Their aim had been to find the collection of gods. To Nie Ting and Zhang Yutong, they were trying to spread their influence to the heavenly network. Now, their main areas of activity were Southeast Asia, North America, and Japan. This was a huge problem. North America was not much of a problem. After all, they had come from North America. But Southeast Asia and Japan were very close to the heavenly network. Zhang Yutong asked, "The North is now vulnerable. Why haven't they attacked the North?" After the battle at Tiger's Back, the Red Sparrows in Russia had been eliminated. If outsiders wanted to infiltrate the region, now would be the time to do so. Lu Shu thought about it and said, "It's probably too cold there." Lu Shu had said this for the sake of answering, but Zhang Yutong seemed to accept this reason. They have sent a Class A from their side. We can be very sure of this, but surprisingly, Sakurai Yeko has silently advanced to Class A as well. It was possible that they had made a miscalculation due to this. But I feel that if they are targeting the heavenly network, they will definitely not give up now. Should we increase our manpower to deal with the collection of gods? Lu Shu asked. He had gone there to prevent any future problems from occurring, but now, there was more trouble. His relationship with Sakurai Yeiko was not made public. At first, he had thought that they would no longer interact with each other. If this had not happened, Lu Shu would almost have forgotten about the young girl dressed in a cherry blossom kimono in Japan. The president of the Swordplay Club. A god among high school students. The leader of the conservatives in the collection of gods. There were times when Lu Shu was confused about these identities. To him, that young girl was still in the darkness, wearing a cherry blossom kimono. She was quietly sitting in the dojo of the Kirihara family, watching him train. At that moment, she did not have any other identities. She was a friend whom he had met by chance, but had a special warmth for. Lu Shu did not know that Sakurai Yeiko still had the salary that he had given her in her intricate wallet. With Sakurai Yeiko's current position, she did not need to carry a wallet around with her. She was the leader of the collection of gods. She did not need to use money to resolve anything in Japan. Her identity was everything. Zhang Yutong contacted the people overseas, then said to Lu Shu. I asked them to focus on the situation in the other areas. We will make a decision after that. Lu Shu asked curiously, who is in charge of overseas affairs? Yu Mingyu, said Zhang Yutong. Oh. He wouldn't be afraid of the mark of a slave, said Lu Shu after some thought. He recalled how Yu Mingyu had been hanging from the door of his house. Back then, he had enjoyed being in that position. Zhang Yutong said, let's talk about official matters. We have received new information. Since yesterday, the slaves in Southeast Asia seem to have relaxed their plans. They have started to lie low. Lu Shu thought about it and said, could it be because they want to concentrate their power against the collection of gods? Thus, the slave owners in Southeast Asia have rushed to the collection of gods. As a result, the activity in other areas has slowed down. I think so too, said Zhang Yutong. Thus, we need a solution to deal with them. With Sakurai Yeiko in charge of the collection of gods, they are very friendly towards us. They are not trying to stall for time, like the conservatives in the past. Instead, they do not have any ambition to expand. Thus, if we want them to be quiet, we will have to help the collection of gods. Furthermore, Sakurai Yeiko is like a bait that will help us to catch the fish. Lu Shu calmly looked at Zhang Yutong. Since you have said so much to me, do you want me to go? Zhang Yutong said, I have allocated a team of 12 to go with you. If possible, we will inform the collection of gods to work with us. I believe that they will be very willing. Lu Shu interrupted him. I can handle a few offenders who are hiding in the dark alone. Zhang Yutong suddenly felt a surge of confidence from the young man in front of him. This was the 9th Heavenly King of the Heavenly Network. Chapter 1092, I, Lu Shu, have never given in to any threats. Night had fallen on the streets in Tokyo. A taxi drove from Setagaya. This was the famous rich area of Tokyo. It was home to the largest number of entrepreneurs, entertainers, and celebrities. It was a new wealthy area that was not that inconspicuous. If you told someone in Japan that you lived in Setagaya, the person's first impression would be that you were extremely wealthy. This area was rather secluded and quiet. Setagaya was in northwest Tokyo, like where Fangshan was in the capital. 30 years ago, after Japan underwent urbanization and made rapid progress, rich people started to gather in this area. The Chinese would feel that this place was rather claustrophobic. Compared to the vast cities in China, the streets here were very narrow. In the entire Setagaya, a 4-lane street would be considered very wide. Most of the houses in Setagaya were detached villas. The tallest house was 6 stories tall. If the buildings in Tokyo were tall trees, then the buildings in Setagaya were intricate bonsais. There were many young people in Setagaya. Kokushikukan University, Kamizawa University, and Meiji University were nearby. As many celebrities lived in this area, the street culture was very rich. Cafes, bars, and capsule hotels were very common. In the evenings, young people would gather in Sangenjaya and Shimokitazawa. Lu Shu leisurely rode a taxi and traveled around Setagaya. The girls in the cafes along the streets softly whispered to one another. They wore short skirts. When they saw Lu Shu looking at them, they would smile. Of course, Lu Shu had not come to Setagaya to see girls. Sakurai Yeiko lived in Setagaya. The collection of gods took up 2 streets in this area. The heroic collection of gods had become the only practitioner organization in Japan. They no longer had to worry about money. The collection of gods had fortified these 2 streets. Practitioners guarded the entire imperial palace of the collection of gods. Although the imperial palace was modern, it was very extravagant on the inside. Lu Shu had come to the collection of gods alone. He did not bring Lu Xiaoyu along with him. On one hand, the problem of the slave owners in China had not been completely solved. If someone similar appeared elsewhere, they needed Anthony to transport the mice army to save the affected cities. The mice army had become outstanding soldiers in the heavenly network. Even Little Fury had become more strong-willed when it talked. On the other hand, Lu Shu rejected Zhong Yutong's offer of going with a 12-man team. He did not want to act rashly and alert the enemy. There was a possibility that many slave owners wanted to act against Sakurai Yeiko. Lu Shu wanted to use this opportunity to settle things once and for all. They were outsiders without any foundation, but if they had decided to act, they would definitely have done their preparation. Lu Shu had returned from the Luniverse. He knew very well that he could not look down on them. There were times when he pondered whether these slave owners were on the same side as the 21 tattooed underlings on the limestone road. If that was the case, they would definitely be much more cautious than he expected. Back then, when the 21 tattooed underlings faced Lu Shu, they did not attack unless their formation was perfect. This left a lasting impression on Lu Shu. The wealthy area was not only occupied by rich people. There were vendors serving these people. Uncles with white towels wrapped around their heads said Ohio one whenever they saw someone. With a smile, they sold the various types of seafood that they had caught that morning. The decorations in the shops selling refined rice made Lu Shu think about the grain shops of the 80s. The unpolished rice was stored in gunny sacks and barrels. Once they were weighed, they were pounded using machines. Night had fallen. The streets were bustling. Tokyo seemed to have recovered from the massive battle caused by the collection of gods. This was what Lu Shu liked about Earth. No matter whether it was Japan or China, the civilians lived modestly. Although they had experienced suffering, they were able to recover and continue moving forward. Taxis could not be flagged anywhere in Japan. Taxi drivers would not stop for passengers at corners and junctions. It was best to wait for a taxi at a taxi stand. Furthermore, the pricing was more structured. The base fare was 410 yen. It sounded very cheap, but the price increased quickly. In the day, the prices would not change without reason. Driving at night or on expressways could incur additional costs, but this depended on the driver. Lu Shu's taxi driver was an overseas employee. He had come to Japan 11 years ago. Now, his mother had fallen sick. He wanted to go back and see her. Thus, Lu Shu took over for him. A young male student was waiting at the taxi stand. After he got in, Lu Shu asked in fluent Japanese, "Where are you going?" "Kanagawa." "Thank you," said the young student in a polite tone. Lu Shu drove towards Kanagawa. He did not need to refer to a map. The entire map of Japan had been imprinted in his mind after his previous assignment. Setagaya was on the border of Kanagawa. It was neither near nor far away. When they reached Kanagawa, the sky was dark. Lu Shu looked at the young student and calmly said, "That will be an additional 3,000 yen." The student was dumbfounded. There was some anger in his expression. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Lu Shu looked at him. "This place is not near to Setagaya. Furthermore, it is night. It is normal to incur additional fees." Lu Shu saw through him. Did this student not have enough money? The young student was slightly angry. "Either charge me the price on the meter, or bring me back." 10 minutes later, the student's phone rang. The ringtone pierced through the silence of the taxi. The student picked up the phone. "Hello, are you there? I flagged a taxi that charged me an extra 3,000 yen when I reached my destination. I told him either charge me the price on the meter, or bring me back." "Yes, I am on the way back." From Kido Takayoshi's distress, plus 666. Lu Shu was very unhappy. He was a rich man now. Who could threaten him? I, the 9th Heavenly King of the Heavenly Network, am being threatened? If you asked me to bring you back, I will bring you back. Lu Shu's state of mind had changed. It was a long and meandering process. But he had not returned to the state of a normal person. Instead, he had stepped into an explosive state of mind. But at that moment, a gray car drove past him. The moment they passed by each other, Lu Shu could feel waves of energy. He turned and took a look. He immediately saw what he wanted to see most. The mark of a slave. It had appeared. Lu Shu was calm. He could not attack yet. He had to find every single one of them. Chapter 1093, Kirihara Dojo. The gray car sped past Lu Shu. He was puzzled. Were they going to attack Sakurai Yako? Why were they in such a rush? When Lu Shu thought about this, he stepped on the accelerator and followed the gray car from a distance. He did not allow the car to escape his sight. To practitioners like Lu Shu, once they reached his level, their reaction speed and vision had far surpassed the limits of human ability. Typically, many people did not dare to drive quickly as they were afraid that they could not react in time, for example to obstacles in the road. Thus, beyond a certain speed, their senses could not keep up. This was the reason why people kept below 120 km per hour even on expressways. Kido Takayoshi, who was beside Lu Shu, had turned pale. He nervously grabbed the handle above the car window. "Don't drive so quickly. I paid you. I paid you, isn't that enough?" From Kido Takayoshi's distress, plus 777. Kido Takayoshi was going crazy. He roared, "Why do you have to drive so quickly?" Of course, Lu Shu could not reveal his true intentions. "I cannot take others who are faster than me. What kind of poor habit is this?" Kido Takayoshi was furious. He had classified Lu Shu as crazy. "You're a taxi driver. Do you think that you're in initial D1? From Kido Takayoshi's distress, plus 666. Isn't that car Nakagawa Senpai's car?" Kido Takayoshi asked curiously. But at this moment, Lu Shu no longer cared about him. Instead, he focused on what he would do next. Lu Shu suddenly realized that when they entered a bustling area of Setagaya, the car slowed down. The car was definitely not heading towards the palace where Sakurai Yako was at. He felt that they might not target Sakurai Yako tonight. Instead, they were doing something else. If the driver was a slave, and not a slave owner, they should be a native citizen of Japan. Lu Shu had no ill intentions towards the slaves. After all, they had been forced to become slaves. After the slave owner in Kuin City had been killed, all the slaves were set free. The Heavenly Network did not trouble them further. This put the Heavenly Network in an awkward situation. What would they do if the slaves killed other people while being controlled? After all, people had been killed. Thus, the heavenly network was still discussing this issue. After the slaves who had killed people were released, they were temporarily banned from exiting the country. Furthermore, they had to regularly report to the heavenly network. They could not go missing. The car stopped at the entrance of a 24-hour convenience store. A young man alighted from the car and went into the shop. Lu Shu slowly stopped the taxi by the road. But before the taxi could stop, Kido Takayoshi alighted, took a plastic bag, and vomited. Lu Shu calmly looked at Kido Takayoshi. Was that really necessary? His driving had been quite stable. He had only driven at 108 kilometers per hour, the car had started to levitate. After all, it was a taxi. Lu Shu sighed. To be honest, he did not have much interest in racing. Some people raced due to the feeling of excitement while racing at high speeds, but Lu Shu did not enjoy this. In reality, a majority of cars, airplanes, and machines were much slower compared to his speed of flying. A majority of Class A practitioners were able to break the sound barrier when they flew. Moreover, Lu Shu's flying speed surpassed that of ordinary practitioners. Thus, the car was not as fast as him. Lu Shu subconsciously felt that there was no point in racing. If he had been able to throw the car aside, he would have flown into the air. But this was good as well. It was more convenient to defend himself with a taxi. The young man walked out of the 24-hour convenience store. Lu Shu was prepared to start his car, but Kido Takayoshi opened the door and climbed back in. Lu Shu looked at him, puzzled. "Why are you back?" Kido Takayoshi fiercely said, "Bring me back to the original place." Lu Shu stared at Kido Takayoshi. Did he still dare to be so fierce? Then, Kido Takayoshi watched as Lu Shu alighted and walked to the passenger seat. Kido Takayoshi was thrown to the street like a chick. Go wherever you are supposed to go. Lu Shu got in the car. He wanted to earn more money from Kido Takayoshi, but the problem was, Setagaya was now very dangerous. It was even more dangerous to be by his side. Kido Takayoshi was not an evil person. There was no need for Lu Shu to risk his life. The young man got into the gray car and drove west. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. His distant memories flooded back. Ahead of him was the place where he had first infiltrated. The Kirihara Dojo. Back then, Taniguchi Bundai had burned Kirihara Yusuke's dojo down. When Lu Shu passed by the dojo, he was dumbfounded. The Kirihara Dojo, which had burned into a crisp, had been rebuilt. It was almost exactly the same as before. Furthermore, Kirihara was still hung above the entrance. What was this? There was no one else from the Kirihara family. Even his relatives had died. Who would rebuild this place for the Kirihara family? If someone had bought this land and rebuilt this place, it would make sense. But Kirihara's name was still above the entrance. Lu Shu looked at the gray car in front of him, who had turned and disappeared. He decided to stop chasing the car. Instead, he stopped by a road not too far away from the Kirihara dojo. Lu Shu stood in the shadows and secretly observed the new dojo. He was absent-minded. It was as if he had just visited this place yesterday. He silently scaled the wall and secretly walked around. He tried to find a good angle to see what was happening inside. He was dumbfounded. Even the inside was completely the same. Lu Shu was silent. Suddenly, a wooden door opened. A young girl dressed in a cherry blossom kimono walked out. She was so pretty that people would sigh when they saw her. Her elegant features seemed to have been carefully sculpted by God himself. Long time no see, Sakurai Yeiko. Suddenly, Lu Shu felt a sense of maturity and stability from her. It was as if these were the qualities that the leader of the collection of gods needed to have, but did not fit with her age. But at the next moment, Lu Shu felt that something was wrong. He turned and jumped into the darkness. Class A's were able to sense when others were looking at them. Thus, the moment Lu Shu looked at Sakurai Yako, she would have been able to sense it. Sakurai Yako turned and looked at the wall, which was empty. She furrowed her eyebrows. At first, she had thought that those people had come to spy on her. Thus, she acted as if she had not sensed anything to avoid alerting them. But this time, she could feel that this gaze was different. There seemed to be a familiar warmth. Sakurai Yako stood in the courtyard for a long time. She laughed bitterly. Her cherry blossom kimono was still and fragrant. Chapter 1094, The Ambitious. After Lu Shu left, he did not go too far away. He stayed on the roof of a house opposite to the Kirihara residence and observed them through the corner of his eye. In the past, the enemies of the best scout, Lu Yizhao, were annoyed. They would not be easily discovered if they looked at a rank 1 through the corner of their eye, but if they used the corner of their eye while fighting, they would die. But now, Lu Shu could use the corner of his eye to calmly observe. He was very curious. Did Sakurai Yako live here? After 30 minutes, a black car drove past. Over 20 practitioners surrounded the car. Then, Sakurai Yako, dressed in black formal wear, walked out of the Kirihara dojo. A practitioner opened the door for her. When Sakurai Yako got into the car in a calm and unhurried manner, Lu Shu suddenly realized that this was what the leader of the collection of gods should be like. She should not be like a young girl who wore a cherry blossom kimono. Sakurai Yako had ascended to the top position prematurely. She had rapidly matured and grown, but she was still only 18. According to Zhong Yutong, when Sakurai Yako was attacked by the slave owners last month, an old official in the conservatives wanted to stage a mutiny, as they were not content with just defending Japan. The conservatives had wanted to target the rest of the world after recovering, but Sakurai Yako had stopped any ambition of conquest. Thus, the old official could not accept this. But this small wave subsided before it could do anything, as the old official had disappeared. It was difficult to pinpoint the reason why he had disappeared. The collection of gods remained tight-lipped about this. Everyone recalled that Sakurai Yako was not only the leader of the conservatives. She was the strongest person, and the person who controlled the most people in the collection of gods. The black car drove away from the Kirihara dojo. The streets fell silent, as if no one had passed by. Lu Shu transmitted this information and asked Zhong Yutong, when was the Kirihara dojo rebuilt? The information came very quickly. It was rebuilt when Sakurai Yako became the leader of the collection of gods. Since last year, no matter how busy she is, she will go to the Kirihara dojo every day, but we don't know what she is doing inside. None of our men can enter. Sakurai Yako does not allow anyone to go in. Can't you spy on them? Lu Shu asked curiously. There did not seem to be any form of defense. We can't rashly enter. Although there seems to be no one inside, the areas around the dojo have been controlled by the collection of gods. There are many experts around, said Zhong Yutong. Someone was in charge of Lu Shu from Zhong Yutong's end. Lu Shu was the 9th Heavenly King. When he went out for missions, a specialized team from the Heavenly Network would support him with information and technology. Lu Shu was silent for a very long time. He had thought that he was good at infiltration, but their surveillance methods were very specialized. There was a delay of 15 seconds by the surveillance equipment. He had not even realized this. Thus, it had been meaningless for him to observe Sakurai Yako through the corner of his eye. When he had driven over, his car plate number and current appearance had been exposed. Sakurai Yako should have known that a taxi driver called Matsuyama Shuji had come to spy on her, but she did not alert the enemy. She had probably thought that he was a slave or a slave owner. This was very awkward. Lu Shu jumped down and looked around. He saw many surveillance cameras in hidden areas. Forget it. He had come to protect Sakurai Yako. He was doing the right thing. He was not afraid of being caught. Lu Shu quickly drove away from the Kirihara house and went home. He stayed in a rented apartment in Tokyo. It was very small and had poor sound insulation. But it was not particularly arduous. After all, the Beijing floaters in the capital lived a difficult life as well. After Lu Shu stopped the taxi, he was suddenly dumbfounded. The gray car that he had been chasing was at his apartment. He subconsciously looked up. It was the middle of the night. Only one room was lit up. It was his neighbor's apartment. There were only 5 apartments in this building. He could see a balcony. Could it have been a coincidence that the owner of the car lived beside him? There were many universities in Tokyo. There were many young people in the streets of Setagaya as there were many universities here. The Tokyo University of Agriculture, Kokushikan University, and Kamizawa University were all here. Suddenly, Lu Shu recalled that according to Kido Takayoshi, it was Nakagawa-senpai's car. Lu Shu regretted not asking Kido Takayoshi more questions. Lu Shu slowly walked up. He had been here for less than a week. He did not even know who lived here. When he reached the 3rd floor, Lu Shu fished out his key. He was about to open the door when he heard a man and a woman fighting about something next door. At times like these, Lu Shu was grateful that this apartment had poor sound insulation. A man deliberately lowered his voice and said, "Didn't you say that one of your classmates is a metahuman? Just tell me who she is. I will be able to obtain training resources and techniques." "I can't tell you. It's her secret," said the woman in a stubborn tone. "You have not cared about me for so long. Where were you the past month? Why is that the first thing you ask me about when you return? Now is not the time to talk about that. Tell me, who is that metahuman?" The man asked in a fierce tone. Lu Shu was sure that the man was probably the owner of the car. He was probably the Nakagawa-senpai Kido Takayoshi had mentioned. But he furrowed his eyebrows. At first, Lu Shu felt that they could not blame the slaves, as the slaves did not have the freedom of action. But now, this did not seem to be the case. Nakagawa was the kind of person that Zhong Yutong had mentioned, the kind who would sell their soul to a demon for benefits. He was trying to find a metahuman hidden among his classmates, in order to find a suitable slave for his slave owner and obtain benefits from his slave owner. The collection of gods was very similar to the heavenly network. All the practitioners belonged to them. The collection of gods was harsher. The heavenly network would let some secret practitioners go, but the collection of gods controlled all the practitioners and metahumans in the country. Only a few people concealed their identities. Thus, when Lu Shu heard what Nakagawa said, he suddenly realized that not all of the slaves had been forced to become slaves. Some had submitted themselves to the devil because of their ambition. The pathway between the Luniverse and the Earth had opened up. This was probably a reason to celebrate for the ambitious. Chapter 1095, Overseas Service on Couple Breakups. Lu Shu was not anxious about opening the door with the key as he was worried that the sound of the door opening would alert Nakagawa. He could tell from the start that the 2 of them in the rental house was a couple. However, their relationship was not very good. Nakagawa repeatedly tried to find out who was the hidden metahuman from his girlfriend so as to offer them to his slave owner. However, the girl refused to tell him what he wanted to know. Lu Shu was waiting. He was wondering if he should save the girl if Nakagawa hit her. He felt that he should save her. If the girl was a partner in crime with Nakagawa, he would not do anything, but she was a girl with good moral principles who became unhappy because she met a terrible man. Even as a passerby, he ought to offer help. Lu Shu felt that he should distinguish this task while maintaining his character. Lu Shu felt that he should not be cold-blooded as it was not the first time he had broken character. At this moment, Lu Shu was somewhat troubled. However, Nakagawa did not physically force his girlfriend. Instead, he walked out furiously. Lu Shu pouted as he hid outside the balcony, clutching the wall tightly, inserting his fingers into the wall as though he was holding onto tofu. This was so as to prevent himself from being spotted by Nakagawa. After Nakagawa left, Lu Shu returned to the front of his door. He opened the door of his room as he heard the crying sounds from next door. The girl did not realize that Lu Shu was back and therefore did not lower her volume. Lu Shu laid on the bed with his arm under his head. He wondered how long the girl would cry for. He was rather interested. By right, the slave owner should not put in so much effort to look for a hidden metahuman. After all, there were so many people in the collection of gods and not every one of them had high levels of alertness. It was actually very simple for them to forcefully put the seal on the members of the collection of gods. This was unrelated to the power of the organization. It was similar to how it was unfortunate for a slave owner to run into a Class C member of the Heavenly Network. Therefore, why should the other party bother about looking for the metahuman, unless they were very special? Then was it possible for Lu Shu to treat the metahuman as bait and lure some of the slaves and slave owners out? Lu Shu was excited. He felt that the other party was unable to find the best opportunity to attack Sakurai Yako. Instead, the metahuman of the Kokushikan University could take a look at what the slave owners wanted to do. To Lu Shu, the people sent by the Luniverse should not be too powerful or else they would not need to spend so much effort. Suddenly, the cries next door stopped. Lu Shu was curious about why it suddenly stopped. Then, he heard a whisper from the balcony next door, "Matsuyama-san, I know that you were not asleep. I am so sorry for disturbing you earlier on." When Lu Shu went to the balcony, he saw a girl who looked rather cute staring at him apologetically. "Matsuyama-san, this is the sushi made by me. I am really sorry, I know that you must be tired after a day of driving the taxi but I still went to disturb you." The girl's eyes were red. However, when she remembered how she disturbed her neighbor earlier on, she held in her tears and made sushi to show her apology. Lu Shu did not understand these people sometimes. That was because when you approached them nicely, you would really experience the lovely part of the people. However, why was there always a group of people who wanted to turn into beasts? Lu Shu smiled and took the sushi. "It's all right, there's nothing wrong with quarreling amongst couples." The girl asked cautiously, "Matsuyama-san, you quarrel with your girlfriend too?" The words hit Lu Shu hard. He had no girlfriend. At this moment, Lu Shu received a message about a girl named Saitu Rin. Lu Shu's face turned black immediately. Why didn't Matsuyama Shuji tell him that they were in a good relationship? Not only was their relationship good, the intelligence report showed that this Saitu Rin and Matsuyama Shuji often shared their feelings with each other. The neighborhood of the rental apartments had always minded their own business and came across as being cold to others. Therefore, their relationship with Matsuyama Shuji was considered good enough. The girl was a second-year student at Kokushikan University, studying law. Her boyfriend, Nakagawa Masaharu, was a third-year law student and they had started dating last year. Then, Lu Shu saw the detailed description about Saitu Rin. Lu Shu was wondering if this was written by the last, Matsuyama Shuji. He even reminded Lu Shu that if he was able to persuade Saitu Rin to break up, he should do it. Nakagawa Masaharu was a playboy with many ex-girlfriends. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. Did the task of the Heavenly Network's overseas service include persuading people to break up? However, the ex-Matsuyama Shuji was correct. Before even talking to Nakagawa Masaharu, Lu Shu could tell that he was a playboy. The Kokushikan University was a private university. Apparently, it was known to be rather famous, but Lu Shu was not so sure. Lu Shu looked at the plate in his hand. 5 delicate tamago sushi. He knew that this was one of the favorite sushis amongst Japanese females, but he had never had the opportunity to taste it. The golden egg roll looked extremely appetizing. Lu Shu finished everything in a few bites. When he thought about his task of persuading her to break up, he said, "Why haven't you broken up with him?" Although I do not know why you two mentioned about the metahuman, his attitude was bad. Don't get involved in this. Saitu Rin was apologetic. He is not like what you imagine. He usually treats me pretty well at school. Lu Shu pouted. He is doing it for show. He does not behave like that behind the scenes. Moreover, he has so many ex-girlfriends, what if some of them are still related to him? It's not what you think it is, said Saitu Rin anxiously. He even showed me the conversation between him and his ex-girlfriend. What does this mean? Lu Shu was silent for a moment. This means that he still has his ex-girlfriend's contact number? Saitu Rin was speechless. However, after thinking about it, she could not refute this. From Saitu Rin's distress, plus 666. Lu Shu asked curious, who is the hidden metahuman in your school? As they were chatting, Saitu Rin suddenly became wary. Why are you asking about this? Seeing how Saitu Rin was like a frightened deer, Lu Shu smiled bitterly. Nothing, it's all right if you don't want to say it, I am not concerned about it anyway. Lu Shu sighed. After the quarrel with Nakagawa Masaharu, Saitu Rin had become extremely wary. He needed other means to figure things out.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on the show. Try to